Thank you everyone for attending. This is our second CX Talk. As we said, we will be having on a monthly basis talks about customer experience, covering all elements. Next month, we're gonna cover some related to the contact centers and how contact center are affecting and one of the main pillars in the journey of the customer experience. So just to give you an introduction of why did we choose emotions. Emotions in Arabic أحاسيس ومشاعر is one of the main, as they say, measurements that are were not treated correctly in the old days of customer experience. It was just on the basis of, if you recall, through the voice, which is through the contact center, you could feel the tone of the customer, if he was happy, unhappy. Now we have reached to a level that we could measure his emotions exactly from the eyes, where exactly does the client really is interested, is he or she basically are very happy of the service, without even bother them with a feedback or a questionnaire. So going to a small introduction, I would love to share this short video, then I will give you, Mark, the floor. I think so. This is something that we will talk deeply in.
The late chef Anthony Bourdain once said, when you sit down with people and just say, hey, what do you like to eat? People will tell you extraordinary stories, mostly nothing to do with food. That's because what you love to eat has more to do with your memories, your thoughts and feelings, and your experiences and stories than it has to do with anything on the plate. This is called sensation transference. Now, we all create sensation transference. It connects us to things we love, especially things we love to eat. And I want you to remember this because food and beverage companies also create sensation transference to connect us to their products. How do I know?
Mark, what do you think about what the doctor said?
Yeah, so ultimately we all live on emotions, and emotions is pretty much all the senses. The more senses are being involved, the more we remember that. So it's not only about like the taste, it's also about the smell, about what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we touch. So all those aspects actually make up the emotions, or kind of like influence the emotions that individuals have. So I'm absolutely with her here. So the experiences are through the senses that we have, and then the emotional response that we have to everything that we sense. Sounds fluffy, but I'll actually put that into context on a little bit more hard facts, obviously, on the CX talk that I will have in a moment here. But it's absolutely spot on.
Good. So I'm going to give you the floor. I will stop doing the sharing from my side, and it's your game. It's your game. Go ahead.
All right. So let me actually bring the presentation up here. Sorry. Where is the share screen? Okay. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you make me someone else out there?
Okay.
All right. That's kind of like the experience that we have right now. Okay.
I will make you someone here. You are. Go ahead.
Right. So now it works out perfect. Share. All right. Is everyone able to see the screen now? Big picture of myself on there and the presentation. Does everyone see that? And is it kind of like moving? Do you see that, Walid?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So then we're kind of like coming up. Now, let me start this way. When Walid actually asked me, can you talk about emotions and customer experience? it's kind of like a little bit tricky because emotions are the response to the experiences. So it's actually two sides of the same coin. So to split that out a little bit, there's obviously so much we can talk about. There's so many different areas, so many different things we can talk about. But the question here is, how do we make that applicable for an actual business? How do we make that applicable for the people on the shop floor? How do we make that applicable for strategy managers, for customer experience managers, for operations managers, for sales managers to actually change the organization and make this happen? And the first step when I'm doing consulting in this field is usually to tell people we need to take a step back and look at what emotions and customer experience really is all about. Now, let me start off with a couple of definitions that we're speaking about the same thing. The definitions that I'm showing you right now come from the Customer Experience Professional Association, CXPA. They're actually, it's an industry body or a practitioner body of many, many thousands of customer experience experts all around the world. And in consensus and a lot of discussions and focus groups in discussions that we had in there, we came up with a couple of core definitions that are very important to understand what I'm talking about in the next 20 minutes. So the first definition they put out say that customer experience is actually the perception that a customer has of an organization. In other words, it's an outside-in view of the customer of the organization. That's not what we feel what customer experience is, it's what the customer experiences. And more importantly here, the customer experience is not only the one transaction that, or the experience with the one transaction that he has, but it's a collection, the bias that the customer has built up by having interactions across multiple touch points, across the people, the technologies over time. So it's not only one interaction that triggers a customer experience, but if we have a bad experience, this is why we can overcome it by saying, hey, that was like a fluke. It doesn't happen really often. It's just an exception because I know they usually do it better. So the consistency of providing good service will lead to a strong customer experience that is influenced even if we mess up. The second one, and this comes now at the side from the organization, customer experience management is what we do as organizations to influence the customer experience. In other words, the set of practices that the organization does to meet or exceed customers' expectations. So we manage the culture, we manage our touch points, we manage our journeys, we manage our channels, we manage any interaction that we have from the inside out. But we have no influence how the customer actually feels about it. I'll give you in a moment a case study or an example of that. So we need to be very careful here when we talk about customer experience that they're two different things. Customer experience is always on the customer side, outside in, and we cannot say it's right or wrong. It's what the customers feel. CX management, on the other hand, is that we manage the environment that will lead to a customer experience. So we cannot work on customer experience. We can only manage the environment to actually reach a certain target experience in there. More on that a little bit later. Now, what do CX professionals then do? CX professionals are now catalysts, or kind of like people that speed up things or who enhance an organization's results by understanding, designing, improving the experiences across the whole customer relationships. So we help the organization come together in having a unique and a holistic and integrated way of building an environment that fosters a certain experience with the customer. So we are kind of like the coordinators, the conductors, but you still need an orchestra to perform that. So those are three definitions that come from CXPA, and I will go a little bit deeper. Walid, yes, you had a question there.
Yes, because I'm sure that you have highlighted here a very important point, which is related to the CX. And one of the big challenges that I see with a lot of our partners, colleagues here, especially, and I'm sure not only in Saudi, it's all around the world, is that the word that we hear, especially as from the basic customer service interaction or basic responsibility until the highest level of CX, which is a VP or a chief CX, customer experience professional. Immediately, they will say anything related to the customer, it's your responsibility. And so this is a big, exactly. And I'm sure that people who are working in that field, I could see it in their faces without seeing them now. That yes, this is a big, as they say, shock, and something that, I mean, how can you really change a culture, and that from a company or an organization or a government entity even, that instead of understanding that it's not the customer service or customer experience responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely, because as I just said, it's like the customer experience manager is like a conductor.
Yes.
But there's someone that decides what music will be played. There's someone that actually sets up the place. And you need obviously all the musicians to put together their skills to make the music come out. But we can be as good a conductor or good as an orchestra or good as organizing the venue as we are. If the person in the audience is tired and falls asleep, the experience of the person in the audience is different than what we wanted it to be. But we cannot say you were wrong as a customer here or as an in attendance. We tried everything that we did. We gave everything that was out, but maybe we did it at the wrong time. Maybe we did it to the wrong people. So at that point, it needs to be integrated. Everyone needs to work together. But I'll talk about that a little bit more. So let me actually break this down a little bit more. So let's talk about the customer experience bit from a customer standpoint. So we need to remember here, it's always the customer's perception. It's not the organization's perception. When we talk about customer experience, we always talk the side of the customer, not the organization. What does that mean? First of all, experiences are always outside in. It's not like what we do, it's how the customer perceives it. The recipient side here is important in CX management or in CX. Number two, what the customer feels when he has the experience is actually the outcome. That's what we want to achieve. We can do whatever we want. Important is only the outcome. What does the customer feel? And there's where the emotional aspect comes up. Organizations cannot decide for the customer what that experience is. The customer decides what experience he has. If the customer is unhappy, we cannot say, yeah, but you're supposed to be happy. No, the customer is unhappy. We cannot argue with that. We can take that feedback, change, but the bottom line experience is what the customer feels. Organizations cannot control the customer's emotion. We cannot say, you are supposed to be happy right now. If we have a child that is kind of like sad and goes to Disneyland, we cannot tell this child now, yeah, but you're in Disneyland, you're supposed to be happy. If that child decides to be unhappy, that's the child's decision. What we can only do, let's take the Disney example here, is to provide it to be a happy place, and everyone is smiling around. There's a lot of things to do to overcome that sadness and try to make that child happy. But we cannot directly tell the child, yeah, but you're supposed to be happy. The emotion is the experience the child has. We can only provide the environment here. So that means that the emotions that a customer has are very personal and very, very situational. Sometimes we can provide the same exact service to the same exact person. If that person was happy, tired, whatever before, one time they might be happy with the outcome. Sometimes they might be unhappy, even though everything was completely the same what we provided. So every customer feels different every single time. We can just hope that our environment is conducive enough to provide the right feedback or the right environment so that we achieve the targeted outcome for that customer. So that means that the experiences are really the emotional response to service delivery, what we deliver to the customer, against what the customer's expectation initially were. That is customer experience. And that's why experiences are emotional. Same thing. Now, how do we manage that? And that's why probably everyone in the audience is here, tips on how we can manage that. So when we look now at the CX management side, in other words, we actually as practitioners, put together an environment that is conducive to the targeted experience. So we can manage the environment, meaning the journeys or the touch point interactions, and we can say this is what we want it to be. But the way how we manage it is by first understanding who is that customer that is in front of us. We need to first understand what type of customer is out there. What are the personas we're dealing with? The personas tell us the needs and expectations at that moment. We also need to understand what are the problems that the customers are facing. What is the scenario here? Yes, Walid.
Just to clarify the persona, because it could be that some of our audience are not aware of what's the persona.
Okay, sorry.
Because it's a word that marketing and I think so customer experience and are using. Persona in Arabic اللي هي شخصية العميل، اللي هي من هو العميل، الشخصية اللي هي أنت تحلل العميل إنه والله تصل لدرجة إنك تعرف إنه والله الجندر طبعا ذكر أم أنثى، إيش اللي يفضله، إيش اللون، إيش الدرجة، إيش نوع السيارة مثلا، يحب إنه ينخدم بأي طريقة، يحب إنه ينخدم بأسلوب مختلف. I just wanted to highlight this because
what Walid said. So I don't speak Arabic, but for those English-speaking ones out here, so yeah, so the persona is kind of like the archetype of a typical customer. So I call it a segmentation. But the difference between persona and segmentation is that the persona includes also behavioral and socioeconomic, not only the demographics, but also the psychographics, the way how people feel, the way how people act, what their hobbies are, what drives this individual. So that's a wider sense of persona, because that drives what the emotions are. All right, but thank you very much, Walid, for clarifying that. So then we have like the problems the customers are facing, the scenarios we face the customer with. And then we need to map out what the emotional state of that customer is. It's called empathy mapping, so that we actually go through and look at the senses the customer has. What is the customer hearing? What does he smell? What does he taste? What does he feel? What does he hear? What does he, did I forget anything? See? All the senses, I got them together. Anyway, all the 5 senses to put them together. Yeah. So that's why we offer, for example, a customer a coffee, because then he has an extra sense of that gets involved in the experience. We put music on in the background. That's why we put a decent smell and don't have like, let's say, the kitchen smell coming out. That's why we actually have very good materials that the customer can feel. High quality paper. That's why you know, the furniture being comfortable and soft, not like ultra hard and things like that. So we actually involve all the senses and provide an environment, hoping that it will trigger a positive experience with the customer. Because again, we're not in charge of the experience. We can only provide the environment. And once we understand all that, we can determine what is the target experience we want to give the customer. Do we want to make the customer happy? Do we want to make the customer uncomfortable? Because funny enough, there are situations where you want to make the customer somewhat uncomfortable. Think of airplanes. When you board an airplane, you go first through first class, business class before you reach the economy class. Why? They want to make you feel uncomfortable to understand if you would pay more, this is what you would get. So in other words, it's kind of like it's reverse psychology, but there are situations where you put the customer through certain experiences for the customer to understand you're getting something cheap, or if the customer is wanting to have a cheap flight, for example. So we can make that target experience, but it's up to the customer on how he perceives it. He can be mad that he's not getting the orange juice or the or kind of like the drink before the flight. But then he needs to understand, hey, my value proposition for myself was I didn't want that, so I'm happy. Is that funny? For a simple orange juice, they're paying 10,000 riyals. So the customer experience is really how the customer feels as the outcome of what we did to him. So those are kind of like some of the important parts. So again, as an organization, we can control only two things: what we promise to the customer through advertisement, sales, the previous experiences, and so on, and then what we deliver, and that's the delivery against that promise. And the customer experience is then where the customer compares what was promised to me, what am I getting, is that the same or not? So I see there was a hand raised, Walid. I'm not sure, do we want to keep with questions for later, or how do we want to manage this?
Well, I'm not sure if there is. No, I don't say. Yani we can.
Okay, no worries. We do the questions a little bit later. No worries. Just kind of like remember, and then we do the questions a little bit later. All right. So here's kind of like therefore the approach what a lot of organizations do, and I put a question mark here behind this whole chain of customer experience is emotional. Therefore, we want to generate excitement, and excitement is adventure. That's where most people would arguably say, yeah, that is true. We want to give the customer positive adventure. I put a question mark in there because I will kind of like guide you through a case study right now to make you question that. So first of all, as an organization, we often interpret CX as a need to excite the customer. We want to give him excitement. We want to give him this wow factor behind it. The question here is, if we interpret CX as excitement, how about all the other stuff that are kind of like the basics? Are we maybe going too far away and not giving the customer what he's really looking for? Maybe stability, maybe dependability. That's not excitement. Sometimes organizations go back and say, we want to outbid the competition. We want to have the most exhilarating, innovative experience possible. We want to be better than the competition. And a lot of people will actually say, yes, it's exactly what senior management asked us to do. But my question here is, excitement equals new equals adventure. Do we really need to do that? Because the question is, do customers actually want excitement? If I go to a bank, I want dependability, safety, security. It's great to kind of like have a customer day, or to have like balloons, or to have like, you know, the brand smell or whatever it is. But is that really what the customer is looking for? And this is kind of like where we need to take a step back as customer experience managers. We need to first understand who are our customers, who are the personas. What is the scenario that they're coming in? Are they afraid? Are they worried? Are they happy? What is kind of like the situational, and what is the experience the customer is already having with us? And then we need to say, what is the best way to provide an environment that fosters the experience that we want to have? And if that is all about, let's say, bank is secure as an example, you don't want to give the customer excitement, because excitement is not what the customer is looking for. You want to give him something dependable, boring. So let me give you an example on this one. So when we talk about adventure, we usually feel of like freedom and accomplishments, and we just love it, and we want to see the new, we want to explore new places, and we want to feel the excitement that's behind it. And everyone will probably nod off and actually say, of course, when we want adventure, we're looking for that. But let me tell you the story here about where adventure becomes a little bit tricky. On one side, adventure is not supposed to be dangerous. I mean, yes, maybe to some extent dangerous, but we don't want to die on our vacation. We want to have the thrill. It's a daring experience. So when we actually say an unusual and exciting or daring experience, but we want it to be within limits. And those limits are set by the persona. Now, granted, some people go bungee jumping, or they go parachuting, or they go hiking into the jungle without any guides, whatever kind of like fits them. For other people, excitement and adventure is to get lost in a city and go off the beaten track and actually find a new restaurant. So we need to find out what is actually the level of excitement the customer is really looking for. So it means that when we actually organize or safe thrills, customers are very much willing to pay for that, because that's a very powerful emotion. But we like that on vacation. We like that in certain situations, but not always. So my question then is, why would we need to do excitement and adventure in our mundane, everyday, regular transactions? And there we want easy, we want timely, we want dependable, we want fixed. So we need to be very careful when we design our customer experience programs that we actually provide the right balance between giving something new, but at the same time, giving exactly what the basic needs of the customers are. I'll come to that a little bit later. So let me just tell you the story here about my little adventurer, Philip, the 5-year-old, adventurer extraordinaire. So, of course, 5 years old, he wants to explore the world. He's not afraid of animals. He's not afraid of excitement. He wants to be excited. If his best friend is obviously Spider-Man and his little brother, we want to make sure that he is excited. And it can be excitement from, whether he's exploring new, let's say, the biology and kind of like touching dolphins or learning about rockets and things like that. So when we actually went over to Universal Orlando in the Islands of Adventure, there was a new ride at that time, the new Harry Potter ride, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. It's a couple of years ago, but of course, for the children, that's like the most amazing thing, because who doesn't want to fly with Harry Potter on a broom? So when we actually went in, and as parents, good parenting is like, is this ride proper for the children or not? So we did our research, and they have like the seats look comfortable, not comfortable, but they're safe. You have kind of like the thing, we put him in there. He was big enough. We have the height requirements that we meet. It tells us it's a thrill ride, a motion simulation, has 3D, 4D experience behind it. It's even wheelchair accessible. They talk about child swap, so it's child safe. So when we're actually looking at this one, it's like, hell yeah, let's go for it. If he wants excitement, it seems to be aligned with the adventure that he wants to go for. So of course, when this whole thing starts off, they're delivering against that expectation. It's an animatronic ride. It's a lot of technology. It's cool. You're flying kind of like on this broomstick. It was a little bit tricky because everyone has their own little compartment. So my little one couldn't see me and I couldn't see him. So we were awkwardly kind of like holding hands, but that was going on. And of course, that is what we expect from the ride. But Harry Potter is also about dragons. Yeah. Harry Potter, and this is 3D, mind you. Harry Potter is also about kind of like those ghosts that come up and try to suck your soul out. Yeah. Now that was not very cool for a 5-year-old. So he got scared a lot. So the question that actually comes up here is, have we done the right research? Was that bad parenting? I mean, of course, he was completely, he played it over. Of course, he was scared, but he was like, it was a cool ride and it was awesome. But it was not as per the expectation that was there. The experience that he had was that of fear and that of kind of like, of not being happy, actually. So when we actually reviewed afterwards, what was our experience behind it, we found out other people had the same issue. So those are pictures on the internet of other people that went through the ride. And mind you, they're much bigger than my little one. There are even forums out there where people say, how scary is Harry Potter? And it talks about darkness, animatronics, spiders, the Dementors. Yes, they show up and they try to suck your soul. That there's fire involved, emotion involved. Now, the question is here, how much research does a parent have to do when you go into a theme park where everything seems to be set up that as long as the child is beyond a certain size, that he should be fine? So here's kind of like where the environment provided by Universal Studios was not necessarily in line with the targeted experience. Why? Because it was the wrong persona. We actually brought a child in there that was not the target audience for this ride, but we had not been told that he was not the right audience. Because this is what we as customer experience managers need to keep in mind here. When we build up the experiences and the environment, we have to do that in mind or being mindful of our target customer group, the target experience for our target persona. But we also have to tell our sales guys, don't sell those products to customers that are not in that target group. Why? Because we will disappoint them. We will not be able to trigger the same target experience. Now, in a write like this, it becomes very clear. But for example, if I actually call up or I do business with a local business and they only speak Arabic and no English, well, they offered me, they sent me an advertisement in English maybe, but then they don't speak any English in there. They set my expectations incorrectly. They were trying to sell me something where I was not the intended target group. The problem here is that we need to be outright upfront with the customer on what they can expect, what they cannot expect, and why we believe that customer is the right customer or not. Don't sell to everyone, sell to the right customers. Because you cannot be everything to everyone. You should not be everything to everyone. So in order to go through, and I obviously don't want to let you walk out here without kind of like the learning part, what does it mean for you? Because you're not operating a theme park here. You're operating banks, governmental agencies, whatever it might be. So you might say this is not applicable. But the core function is always the same. You need to manage the environment, which they did, but you need to keep in mind here the type of customers you want to sell, the personas, the scenarios, and the empathy method. And that's where Universal failed by not telling me that my son, for example, was not in the right target group, that the experience he would have was not in line with what I expected based on the promise from the outside that he would get. And even though it was a perfect ride, it was awesome. I mean, for me as an adult, it was a great ride. My expectation and the promise they gave me was fully met, maybe even exceeded. For the little one, the expectation that he had based on the promise given was not delivered against. And that is where the emotions will drive the perception of what the customer experience actually was. So how can you do this better? And this is kind of like a quick tool set that you can apply to bring this point over. You might have heard of Hertzberg's two-factor theory, the motivators and hygiene factors. This is an HR component or a concept where people actually say people are satisfied with their job or motivated to do their job, employees, if they have, for example, achievement, recognition, responsibility, advancement, growth, and so on. But then also, so those are kind of like things that motivate people at their job. And then you also have kind of like what he calls the hygiene factors, the boring stuff. Like, for example, having a company policy, relationship with the supervisor, work conditions, the salary, and so on. They're kind of like the hygiene factors, which means in the absence of those things, the employees are unhappy. Now, the beauty of this model, you can use it already for your culture management and employee engagement and so on. But the beauty of this model is it works for customer experience as well. Because if we just do this in customer experience terms, we would say, the motivating factors are the experiences, the adventure, the excitements. When we give customers rewards and recognition and events and bonus miles and digitization and fancy apps and websites and flashy branding. But what the customer to a great extent is still looking for is the service basics, the boring stuff. Cleanliness, timeliness, friendliness, accuracy, the knowledge of your employees, the getting the job done actually. It's great to have like a great app, but it doesn't help me. If it doesn't help me to fix and get the job done, then the whole app is completely useless and I will have a bad experience. If I prefer to talk to a call center agent on the call, I don't want to go to an app. I'm of the generation that I want to talk to a person. So by giving me a flashy app does not excite me. It actually turns me completely off. I don't like that. My bank, just today I found out, the bank that I'm dealing with over here in the UAE, they changed their call center timings. It's now from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening. Who has time to call the bank throughout the day? Give me access to my bank during the evening times, for example, or early in the morning when I have time, when I'm not interrupting my work. This is a change in customer experience management in the environment that is completely going against what my experience, the outcome, the feeling I have from that one is in there. Now, I'm probably one of the most profitable customers for that bank. So why is it that they try to disenfranchise me? Why do they want to give me an app? Just because a couple of 20-year-olds, sorry if you're 20-year-old right now, but I'm not meant offensive, but just because 20-year-olds are asking for that, they're not the profitable customers for the bank. Give me what the profitable customers want. Am I not your target group? Then tell me, then I go to another bank. But don't tell me that I'm an important customer, and then don't give me the experiences or the environment that you promised me and that I'm actually looking for. The difference here is, and this is what we need to understand, customer experience is not only the experience side and saying, oh, the other stuff is quality management. No, customer experience management is everything. The whole environment that we manage, the quality side as well as the excitement side, is customer experience management. It's a practice of the overall organization, the environment that we manage, to trigger a targeted experience. So two outcomes here already. Customers do not only want excitement, they also want stability, dependability, structure, safety, you name it. You got to understand what your customers are looking for and give those customers that. That is also customer experience management, even though it might be boring. We need to stop interpreting CX management as only excitement, and we need to start understanding the customer's expectations and deliver what we promised. If we don't do that, almost certainly the experience will be bad and we will have negative emotions. So here are the takeaways then of everything that I was trying to bring over to you guys. It's pretty much the quick recap on this. First of all, experiences are emotional. We cannot actually differentiate between experiences and emotional because the customer's reaction has an emotion behind it. It's the reaction to our service delivery. That's how the customer feels. Second, organizations cannot control the customer's emotions. The only thing we can control is the environment in which those emotions are triggered. So we need to stop telling customer this is how you're supposed to feel. We need to actually say, we believe you should feel this way, and we hope we have been able to provide that environment. If not, tell us, give us that feedback, and we will adjust. That's the voice of the customer we listen to. Emotions are personal, and every customer is different. So we need to understand who are the customers and what is the environment that he or the feeling the customer has. If I'm tired, if I'm exhausted, if I'm unhappy, it's almost impossible for an organization to give me a good customer experience because I'm already biased with my own feelings beforehand. But we need to understand as organizations, we can only try so hard, but the customer is in charge of his own emotions. And if we want to manage this environment, meaning the journeys and the touchpoint interactions, it does not work without understanding the personas, understanding the scenario that the customer is in, and the emotional state the customer is in, for example, through empathy mapping. If we don't look at the whole environment, customer experience management will not work. And that's actually the evolution from pure quality management to now customer experience management, because we look at the outside-in approach with the target experience we want to have with the customer. So the final outtake here is, once organizations understand that, they can determine what the target experience is supposed to be, and then provide and manage the components accordingly. But without understanding who the customer is or is supposed to be, what we want the customer to feel, we cannot manage the environment. That's customer experience management. So I hope that with this kind of like recap or kind of like this structure out here, I was able to showcase you a little bit on emotions and customer experience part behind it. So Walid, over to you, maybe question and answers. I know that someone was raising the hand before, so maybe you can run the QA now.
If anybody has a question, we are more than happy to get your questions, and please feel free. Just until somebody sends us any question, I would like, if Mark, if you go back to the slide that was before this one, if you please.
This one? Yeah.
Just, two things are very important that most of the times that when I meet with partners that we work with, I tell them, look, instead of, as they say, putting a plan that and you want to invest, I'm saying it from very honest partner to everyone. See what the customer needs and put the investment there. Instead of jumping that I want to do chatbot, I want to have that and this and that, and just to show off, believe me, it's not the right approach. The right approach that you want to be stable, especially in the times that are coming. We saw Corona, what it did, and Corona did not leave until now. We are facing the same problems. We don't know what will happen next. The second thing that I really amazes me all the time in customer experience, especially customer experience professional, people who are professional practitioners, they need to have a lot of tools to really support them. An example, a person who is responsible of customer experience, he needs to understand mathematics. He needs to know a lot of things about IT, psychology, basically other personal issues, technology. All of these are really covered in that area. So the person who really, a female or a male, God help you, it's not an easy job. We are more than happy to support. There are a lot of technologies that could support you to reach there, strategies. The main thing to reach your goal in customer experience is that you need to have the belief. It's not your belief only, it's the top management belief. If they support you and they believe in you, you will hit the sky. You will, no limits for you. I don't think so. We didn't get any questions. So if you'd like to close it from your side, Mark. And
yeah, you can put your questions into the Q&A if you want to. So there's a button inside the system that says QA, so you can just type the question in there. Walid, I'm not sure if we can unmute people and they can ask the question. I'm not sure if that's possible. That's the alternative if people don't want to type. But in the meantime, probably to build on what Walid actually said. See, the big misconception is that we have to be everything for everyone and we need to serve every customer right. That's not true. As crazy as it sounds. We need to decide who is actually our targeted customer. We cannot be everything for everyone unless you're a government agency that has to service everyone. But if you're like a private organization, you can choose who you want to serve and who not. But those customers that you choose to serve, you need to serve well. And those that you choose not to serve, those you will make it harder for them, or you will actually not have to please them. So for example, if you want to sort out, let's say, a certain clientele that comes in and goes to a restaurant with a tie and a suit and everything, and you don't want people, tourists that come in with shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, for example, you can actually put a dress code in. Now you might say that it's restrictive, but it will sort out your customers immediately. Why? Because those customers that want to go to a restaurant in shorts and a Hawaiian shirt will not want to go to that restaurant. So ultimately they're saying, it's like, this is not the right restaurant for me. Automatically you have a different clientele. Therefore you can be more focused on the needs and expectation of that target segment, that target subgroup.
We have 2 questions. Great. You have Mark.
Perfect.
Okay, we have 1 chat and 1 question. So I will go to the first. What is the right way to define the personas? This is 1.
Yeah.
What if there is there are different characterism that require creating more than 1 persona? Can we have different personas for each business, or it has to be only 1 type of persona?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and actually, I get that a lot from the clients and from the consultancy engagement that we have. It is most likely that you have more than 1 persona using your services. The minimum that I usually come across is 3 to 4 personas, but sometimes we have even 8 different personas buying your product. Think about it. When you sell spaghetti, just as an example, is there only 1 type of person that buys spaghetti? No, it might be the student that wants to cook for himself. It might be the mother that wants to cook for 15 people when everyone comes together. It might be the husband that doesn't know how to cook anything else but wants to surprise his wife. It might be people that buy spaghetti because they want to use the spaghetti for arts and crafts. I mean, you don't only have to cook spaghetti. Now, each one of those groups that I just described has different intentions, different needs, and different expectations. So that means you have, in this example, 4 different personas, 4 different sets of needs and expectations. Now, in the traditional way, when we segment our customers out, it's usually that we say we have the old people, the young people, we have the rich people, the poor people, we have the people with family or the people without a family, single, male, female. So we only look at the demographics. But where persona comes in is that we ask for the usage pattern. What do you intend to achieve with our services? How do you feel about the services? What are the hobbies, the socioeconomic surrounding that actually drives you? What are the emotions, the feelings you want to get out of that? So personas go much further than the traditional demographic segmentation that we have. And therefore, to answer your question, yes, almost certainly you will have different sets of customers. If you truly have only one persona group, then quite frankly, your business is in danger because it means that you're very extremely targeted to one customer group only or one persona group. And if that persona group doesn't like you anymore, you will be without business. Now, there are very few exceptions. Think of, for example, an airplane maker that builds military aircraft. There's only one persona group, which is governmental agencies that buy that airplane. They will not sell it to just anyone out there. So there you will have a very limited set of personas, but therefore the cases where you have less personas are very few and apart. So I hope that kind of like answers the question out here.
We have a question and one hand raised, so I will answer. I will give you the question. It's from Lena. How can I satisfy the customer in the long run? And she has 2 question marks after it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Again, it's a very good question. And this is ultimately what most organizations try to achieve with customer experience management. Number one, most organizations have figured out that just providing the basics is not enough anymore. For example, a restaurant that is clean and the food is tasty is not enough anymore. So you need to be able to evolve and give the customer more towards what is influencing his emotion. Think of like friendly servers, or maybe your serving staff is wearing all uniforms, or you have like a nice branding or a certain atmosphere, or you renovate your restaurant every couple of years or maybe once a year. So the point here is that you need to figure out what exactly your customers are looking for, what are kind of like the spoken but also the unspoken needs. Maybe there's pressure from the outside as well. If you see, for example, that your customers are not coming back as often anymore, then you need to ask them what happened. So you look at the usage patterns. Has the frequency or maybe the size of the purchases reduced? And if that's the case, then you would ask why. Are you going to someone else? Is just maybe the market is changing in itself? Is there a competitor that comes up and so on? So if that is the case, you need to take a strategic decision. Is this consumer group or this customer group still a good customer going forward, or is it actually to be able to retain that customer too expensive going forward? So if you say, for example, to produce what the customer wants, the service costs us, let's say 80 riyals, but we make 100 riyals only on this customer, you have a profit margin of 20% before, or 20 riyals before. Now, if the needs have shifted and this customer in the future will need extra services, extra care, extra quality, extra services, and therefore your cost would go to 105, you need to ask your question, first of all, do you want to retain that particular customer? Why would you want to keep that customer if now you're making a loss with that particular customer? Maybe now it's time to shift over and find someone else. If you want to retain that customer, then you need to change your organization internally in order to improve the profitability and improve your basics, the quality management, the lean management, the consistency, and so on, to still be competitive. You should not put customer experience on top and excitement and all that stuff if you cannot pay for it and the customer is not willing to pay for it. Now, number two, if you therefore want to retain this customer and it's still a profitable customer, how do you retain them? Is to keep in touch with them. You ask the customer from time to time, are we still giving you everything that you need and everything that you want? If the customer comes back and says, yeah, but you could do better, listen to the customer and change your processes. If you figure out that you cannot help the customer anymore because it's too expensive, you need to tell the customer very openly, we want to retain you, we want to give you those services, but we cannot pay for it because what you're asking for is too expensive. Let's renegotiate. So the question here is, you retain customers for a longer time. You will satisfy the customer in the long run by continuing to listen to him if his needs and expectations are still being met, or if they're starting to shift to something new and then adjust to what the customer is looking for. So again, it's like listening to the customer, voice of customer, and where adequate and where appropriate, you change your organization to continue giving to him. But I mean, I'm very, very aggressive on that customer experience aspect. If the customer is not willing to pay for those extra services, then he's technically not really valuing those items. And then you need to put the customer, ultimately tell them, I give it to you, but you have to pay more. If you're not willing to pay for it, it cannot be that important for you. So that is also a strategic decision that you need to have, and where you need to kind of look through. Okay. I hope that kind of like explains what Lena was looking for. If not, just let me know, and then I'll kind of like extrapolate on that.
We have another two questions, one from Lance, one from Kazi, but Kazi already, and he sent me. Kazi is okay. Let me try, Kazi. I'm not that familiar with how can I make you live, but I hope that I can do that. Let me check. Hi, Kazi, can you speak? Hello, Kazi? I'm sorry, and I tried.
You might be on mute right now. Let me actually, okay, I'm putting.
Easier.
Kazi, can you hear us?
Kazi, you're on mute. Can you?
He's on mute right now. Kazi, okay. So I leave him on mute from our side. So whenever he's ready to. Okay,
we have here. We have Kazi's. He has a question. How emotion does work into an experience? Please elaborate. And also Lance's question, and we have Nora. So I think Kazi has requested that question first. So
okay, so let's go first for the question from Kazi here. So how does emotion work in the experience? So think about it this way. If I go to a bank and I'm driving up to the bank, I'm stuck in traffic because the metro is still kind of like causing all the traffic jams, and I'm running short on time, and I have to go. I'm not happy that I have to go to the bank because they need a signature from me. Why do they need a signature? I mean, we spoke on the phone, I got authenticated with my PIN number, I spoke to the person, I sent them an email, and now they come back and say, yeah, but we need a physical signature. So now I'm sitting in the car, I'm short on time, I'm running late for another meeting. It's the only time that they're open because the opening times are not very good. I'm finally reaching the bank. I'm struggling to find parking, finally find parking, going into the bank, rushing in, long lines. They're not prepared. They need to find my case and so on. Now, there are certain aspects that we can manage as an organization. So we can, for example, manage if you call the customer in, have the documentation ready. If we want a signature, can we give the customer an alternative? Can we give him a digital channel or a digital signature? Can we change our processes that the customer doesn't have to come in, or we can prepare, do everything, or even change the opening times that it's easier to come in? Can we put our branches into more accessible areas where there's more parking and less traffic? This is how we do CX management. But as an organization, we cannot influence the traffic. We cannot influence whether our customer has time or no time, whether he might have had a fight with his wife in the morning, whether he's like disappointed or angry because he didn't sleep well last night. So emotions on one side will bias how the customer will feel about our service delivery. We can do everything correct as per our procedures, and still the customer can say, but it was a bad experience, I didn't like, because of whatever reason. So as customer experience managers, we need to understand what is under our control, the environment, and what is not under our control. So when we now say what is under our control, we need to make it as easy, as straightforward, as aligned to the needs and expectations and the channel utilization, for example, of our target customer group, of our target persona, as much as possible. So if I prefer to talk to someone or shake a hand to cut the deal, then give me a branch. Don't say you need to go do it through a chatbot. So give me the channels that I, as a target customer, want to have, for example. But the emotion here is the emotional response. If I'm stressed out, again, I'm driving into the branch, parking issue, but I drive up and there's valet parking available, or there's specific reserved customer parking for my bank. I park my car, go in, they see me, they recognize me immediately. They're kind of like calling me over. They have all the documents ready, signature, thank you very much. Here's a coffee to go because I know you like your coffee, but you're short on time. Off you go. I can actually change the emotion the customer was in by surprising him or by doing the right thing that is in line with his provision. The problem here is how the customer feels about it after he has walked out, when he leaves your branch, the emotional state he's in. Is he happier than before, or is he unhappier than before? That's ultimately the customer experience. I hope that Kazi kind of like gives examples and explains a little bit how the emotion and experience tie together here. If not, just kind of like put another note real quick in there. Let's go over to Nora's question real quick. Can you share? Sorry, yeah?
There is Nora and Lance with us. Here, Lance, what can be the key indicators, metrics that an organization can measure, link for the emotional aspects of CX?
Yeah, and if anyone figures that 100% out, they will strike it rich, because that is the all-inclusive question. How can we actually measure the customer satisfaction? Now, we cannot obviously immediately measure for every single interaction, for every single situation, the emotional situation of the customer, not for every transaction. And I say for every, because what you can do, for example, there are methodologies to look at, let's say, the face of the customer, and you do facial recognition algorithms and AI that can actually say what type of emotion you have. You might have seen like the videos when the tech executive needed to talk to the Congress in the US, and they were kind of like investigated. And when they were talking, and then they put this facial recognition on it that says they're fearful, they're defiant, they're surprised or whatever. So you can read emotions off the faces. So that's one way to do that. But there's no specific metric behind it where you could say 30% of our customers were disgusted and so on. There are, but they're like really tricky to measure. It's very cost intensive and time intensive to do that. Now, on the other hand, you have stand-in measures. So for example, if the customer is not happy, he will usually vote with the feet. He will leave you. He will not like you, and he will try to go to your competitor. So in those situations, what would happen is that the customer, you can look at your turnover ratio. You can actually look at how many customers are leaving, how long are they staying with you, what is the share of wallet, what is the customer lifetime value, what is the repeat business, how often do they do that. So those are stand-in indicators that actually allow you to measure if customers are generally happy with the value proposition that you give to them. The Net Promoter Score is very often used or mentioned as one. But again, the Net Promoter Score is not a customer experience measure. And I need to be very clear on that. The Net Promoter Score is actually a measure of intent, where the customer is actually telling you, or possibly not telling you, how much word of mouth he's actually willing, advertisement, he is willing to give you in the market. That's not a customer experience measure, and it's unfortunately very often seen as that. So there are some metrics in there, but again, to have the specific emotional part is very hard to do. So what companies do, they do focus groups, they do specific measures for some individuals in trial runs, in design of experiments, when they design new services, for example, they see how customers would react. Like in movies, for example, they have like a trial audience and then they interview them afterwards, what do you think, and so on. And sometimes you have like this happiness meter. Like in Dubai, we use that where you have like the smileys where you say, are you happy, unhappy, to what extent? But then you need to follow up and ask, why are you unhappy? Why are you happy? So that you get more information on what the actual drivers are. So it's a very complex aspect. It is possible, but there are pros and cons on that particular process. I hope that kind of like explains the question.
Thank you, Mark. This is our last question. Last question from Nora is, can you share some methods for how to know a customer feedback other than satisfaction surveys?
Yeah, so satisfaction surveys is ultimately an inside-out view. So you ask the customer, okay, were you satisfied? But you actually, in my opinion, more important measures would be, it's like, for example, first contact resolution. The customer is contacting you not because the customer loves you. The customer contacts you because he has a problem with your product or service. He was forced to contact you because you're not able to allow the customer to be very easy to deal with. I mean, other than a sales transaction. So in this instance, for a service transaction, I would argue a good measure is, are you actually fixing the customer's problem on the first attempt? When the customer calls you up, are you immediately able to fix this issue? That's first contact resolution. Another one, I mentioned earlier, like the Net Promoter Score. It's a stand-in measure. I'm not a big fan of it. Actually, funny enough, some surveys recently said that about 60% of customer experience professionals, I mean, real customer experience professionals, do not consider NPS to be a good measure of customer experience. So it's there, it's kind of like a divided field. Some like it, some don't. It depends on how you use it. Another one is, instead of going for CSAT, customer satisfaction in general, that you go for TSAT, transaction satisfaction. And the transaction satisfaction, you would go for more breakdown. Were you satisfied with the speed? Were you satisfied with the outcome? Were you satisfied with the friendliness and so on? Because those are the main drivers what customers are really looking for. And again, the drivers, the environment will ultimately say, is the customer getting the emotion that he's really looking for?
Okay, thank you.
So Kazi, again, has, we actually unmuted you. So I'm not sure, Kazi, can you talk now?
Hi, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear now. Great. Kazi, tell me.
Excellent, finally. Mark, I have a question over here. In customer experience, why emotion has been added? What is the concept mainly about the emotion over here? Because I do understand customer experience is not only the emotion, there is many others optimistic things that customer has. So what is the concept over here that you add over here emotion with related to the customer experience?
Yeah, so going back to kind of like what we had in the very first slide, there's a difference between customer experience and customer experience management. Customer experience is purely what the customer feels about how you have delivered the service, the outcome that is on his side. So in other words, you give the customer something and you promise him something before. The customer looks at, did you deliver as a service provider what the customer was looking for or not? And the reaction to that is the emotion. So you're either happy, you're satisfied, you're dissatisfied, you're angry, you're sad, whatever the emotional reaction is. So customer experience is equal to emotion because it's how the customer feels about what you did. Now, the second part is customer experience management. That's how the organization inside out provides something to you. So we give you the customer experience in a fast manner, in a structured manner, in a nice manner, in a knowledgeable manner, and so on. So we actually provide, as an organization, the environment in which we give the service and hope that the environment makes you feel better. So for example, we provide you a comfortable chair while you're waiting, or we give you a hard bench while you're waiting. The experience, on the other hand, is that I feel disappointed that I come in as a premium customer to the bank, and then you want me to sit on a metal bench. Give me a comfortable sofa. So in other words, the customer is dissatisfied, having the emotion of unhappiness about the service because he was not getting a comfortable, relaxing environment. Customer experience management is giving him the bench. Customer experience is how the customer feels about the bench that we gave him. I hope, Kazi, that explains it a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. On the other hand, I would like to ask over here, I do understand that it is been recording this presentation or Business Way. So at the end, would you mind to send us the record so that we can, have some refresher on it?
Sure.
Yeah, I believe this recording will be in the YouTube channel later on. Walid, correct me if I'm wrong.
Available in the YouTube channel and also through LinkedIn and all of our channels. It will be there.
Then also there I do understand also there will be a link so that we can quickly see this recording. Is it the way?
Yeah. There will be, as soon as we finalize it and as they say, pamper it a little bit, and we will upload it to the link, and it will be available for everyone.
Excellent. It will be easy access. Thank you so much. Much more appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Kazi.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, Walid, I think that's from my end. You want to take back control, or you want to do the closing words?
Thank you for everything, Mark. It was a pleasure as usual. Inshallah, seeing you soon in our next session, and hope to see you soon here in Riyadh to have everyone face to face meet you.